Hey folks, thanks for tuning in for this Wednesday Comics for Education video. Today, I'm going to do something a little different for you. I'm going to give you 3 pitfalls that a lot of new teachers to comics and graphic novels fall into when beginning to teach with the medium. All right, real quick, I just want to let you know. Number 1, beware of poor adaptations. As educators, we want to get into something new and we want to jump right into it. But if you're not too familiar with comics and graphic novels and the options you have, you may find some Hamlet comic and say, you know what, it's a comic by kids like comics, right? So I'm teaching Hamlet, I'm going to jump right into this comic, but it might be a really poor adaptation. There are a lot of poor adaptations out there. Just like, you know, any sort of medium you may come across, there's bad songs, there's bad videos, there's bad short stories, there are bad comics and graphic novels. I hate to say it, but there are. So what I would do is find an adaptation for a book you're interested in teaching and do some research on it, right? That means finding a friend who you know might be into comics and graphic novels and asking them, is this good? Will my students like this? And get a variety of opinions on that. Or bring a chapter into your students and be like, do we like this? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, and if it's not a good adaptation, do not force it upon them. If you end up reading a bad adaptation and you all figure out pretty quickly it's a bad adaptation, you can stop and move on to something else. So that is number 1 pitfall. One of the 3 pitfalls we're going to talk about today is beware of poor adaptations. Find somebody that can help you. Number 2 is to remember, ladies and gentlemen, graphic novels and comics, they're books. They're books. There is no mystery. There's no secret door to unlock. There's no code. It's a book. You've taught books before. This is no different. It adds levels, it adds layers, and if you look at my other videos I'm putting out on Wednesdays, we're talking about the vocabulary of comics and how you can talk about them in an academic way with like panel, gutter, bleed, graphic weight. So it adds more things you can talk about. But we're still talking about characterization, we're still talking about tone, we're talking about mood, we're talking about plot structure, all of those things. So don't be fooled by the mysticism of comics and graphic novels. They're just books. The third thing that a lot of teachers new to comics and graphic novels don't do is the research, okay? And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Be careful. Number 1, if you know a friend or a teacher is using a book at their school, you might just assume that it is good for your class and your students. That's not necessarily the case. I was on a call with some friends yesterday and we all work at different school districts, and what may fly at one of our districts won't fly necessarily at another district. So you have to know what's good for your kids in your district and your curriculum, and don't assume because a teacher buddy of yours teaches with a particular book that it's okay for you. And also, you may hear like some book is super popular and you may put it in front of kids maybe without reading the whole thing. One of the things I say all the time is make sure you read everything front cover to back cover that you give your students. That goes without saying, right? We have to do our research with things we put in front of our kids. We may be excited. We may want to get a comic and a graphic novel in front of them quickly because we're juiced and we've heard that this book is just fantastic. Pause. Look at it, read it, do your research to make sure that this book is appropriate for your kids and your school district that you are teaching in. So, 3 pitfalls I want you to avoid as you get into comics and graphic novels for the first time in your classroom. 1, beware of poor adaptations. Find a friend or your students that can help you determine whether this is a quality adaptation you should be using. Number 2 is to remember, it's just a book. Don't get caught in mysticism or I've never taught a comic or a graphic novel before. How different is it? Guess what? It's not that different. People are going to tell you, like, I know people are like, whoa, you slow down. No, it's not. It's a book, guys, and girls and ladies and gentlemen. So don't fall for that trick. You know, if you want to teach a comic and a graphic novel and you've never done it before, it's like teaching a regular book with extra things you can now talk about. And the last thing that I want you to be aware of is making sure you do your research and that you are not putting any book in front of your kids that can that they're not ready for, that you're not ready to have discussions with them. You're not ready to have discussions with administration or parents about it. So make sure you are vetting and approving all of those things that get put in front of your students. All right. So I hope those 3 little tips for any of you new to teaching comics and graphic novels, I hope those help you. Remember, every Wednesday I do an educational comics and graphic novel video, and every Friday at noon I release a review video of 5 titles that for you and that you may want to teach or read for yourself. So keep coming back. Thanks for watching. I'm the Comics Teacher.